Hello and welcome to Little Live Story, the podcast where we take an anime and turn it into a movie.
And a movie turned into an anime.
I'm Eric.
I'm Jared.
And Jared, last week I promised you something difficult.
And I can only imagine what that's going to be.
Yes, I promise I delivered. So let's just jump in.
Let's just go right at it.
Today I need you to make an anime out of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh, God.
Terry Gilliam counterculture classic.
Jesus Christ. Read us in, Eric.
Okay, it's essentially a semi-autobiographical, drug-filled dirge based on the life of Hunter S. Thompson and his trip to Las Vegas to discover the American dream and what's become of it and all this other pretentious, drug-fueled, post-hippie shit. And really, again, there's not much of a plot. It's just a sports journalist and his quote-unquote lawyer go to Las Vegas on a drug-fueled fucking tirade and do crazy shit. That's really the best way to say it. There's not that much that happens beat to beat.
Might I mention he completely fails to do the job he went there for twice?
He writes the article.
He didn't even watch the goddamn race.
Oh, that's true. But so yeah, that's that. But before we go, so what was your opinion of this?
So far, of every movie you've shown me, this has been my least favorite, and is as close to not like as I can get while I still like it.
At least you still liked it.
Yeah, it's not like it was terrible. It just I was so out of my element, I couldn't really get into it.
I was gonna say, yeah, we knew going in that there was no fucking way this is gonna connect with you.
Yeah.
But okay, enough beating around le bush. Have at it.
All right. We start with a kid in his room. He's sitting at a desk and he's going through math formulas. Like, we can see the formulas flying over his head. He's reciting a bunch of different things. He's clearly doing math. He's doing it really fast. While he's doing that, we survey his room. It's a very Spartan room. There's a couple books on a bookshelf. There's his bed. There's a calendar. And there's a clock on his desk. But there's not really too much else. The clock spins a little, and now he's doing history. He's pacing around his room, reciting certain historical events and who did what and whatnot. Then we skip ahead again. He's now back at his desk, writing down a bunch of kanji characters, and he's clearly being very studious. And I
was about to say the word studious.
Yes, very studious. And the time on the clock picks up and gets faster and faster until it's 1 a.m. and he goes to bed.
How old is this kid? Gotta ask.
High school.
I don't know why I keep asking.
Well, you just gotta at least establish it.
When you said kid and I heard desk, I thought maybe it was like child, so I had a reason to ask.
Next day, he's at school taking a test. It's clearly some kind of midterm or finals. It's some big test that encompasses a lot of subjects. And you can see him taking the test. He's answering everything very quickly. Like, he's clearly, from context clues, doing very well. We skim through that, and a couple days later, he gets his test back, and he gets it, a 98.
Yay.
He looks aghast. He is mortified. He did not want a 98, and that is very clear from his expression.
Okay, all right.
He walks home very solemnly and kind of sneaks into his house. And as he's about to go upstairs, his father catches him. We skip ahead, and his father's holding his test crumpled in his hand, beating him with a belt, whipping him. He's yelling at him like, colleges only expect absolute perfection. You'll never get into big business. You'll never get into a good school. You'll never make anything of yourself. You are a worthless piece of scum, and you should be ashamed of yourself for ever stepping back inside this house. And
I feel like there's a Pink Floyd song about this.
Maybe. But yeah, he's just going absolute ham on him. The mother isn't really getting involved. She's just sort of standing in
meek sidelines.
Yeah, she's not party to these events, but she's not really against it.
Yeah, she's not stopping her husband, but she's not joining in on the holy shit, my husband is beating my son.
Yes.
Yeah.
Around the end of the father's rant, the kid stands up and bolts out of the house.
Good
and
kid.
He starts running down the street and running. And as he's running, the scenery's changing, and now he's in like a really commercial part of town. Very tall buildings and whatnot. He's clearly run basically from the suburbs to city proper. He sees a bunch of tall buildings around them, looking up at them, and then we transition. He's now standing on one of the tall buildings, right on the edge, looking down at the cars below him. He is clearly contemplating suicide.
Yeah. Hey, wait.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, what's the name of this in your version?
Just Fear and Loathing.
Okay, that's fair. Not Fear and Loathing in like...
Yeah, it's not Fear and Loathing in Tokyo or Gifu. It's just Fear and Loathing.
Okay, had to check.
So he's staring down at the street, and he's breathing hard. He's trying to steady his breath so he can prepare himself to, I guess, die. And he's breathing and breathing and breathing, and the camera holds on him. He falls backwards. We hold on the empty space, and now his butt is planted firmly on the roof's building. He's hyperventilating. He clearly clearly couldn't go through with it.
Good kid.
After he calms his breath enough to no longer be hyperventilating, he slowly leaves the roof and goes back to the street. So as he's wandering the streets, he just takes a random turn into one of the alleyways. A man steps out, and after a brief non-verbal exchange, the man basically opens his coat and is like, "Do you want something?" The main character just stares at him, and we cut. He is now once again back on the street. He is walking down the street, and we see a couple still images of that same man we just saw, now with a needle or something in his hand, holding it out to him. The main character stepped back a little. We see his father with the belt. We see the test, and then we go back to the streets. Eventually, he comes across a gyaru. And this is going to be a little hard for me to describe because I'm not good with fashion, but it's a certain fashion style. It's Japanese for gal, quote unquote. Usually they have tan skin, bleached hair, and Americanized clothing. I'm going to show Eric a picture of a gyaru so he can help me describe this because this is not my forte.
Okay, show me. They look sort of like early 2000s Britney Spears style American pop idols, but Japan, and like big 80s hair.
That's really not a bad way of describing them. They're just very different from the average Japanese person.
Yeah, it's weird.
Anyway, he sees this gyaru, and she's smoking a cigarette, and she sees him walking slowly with his head hung kind of towards her, not actually at her, and she hails him over and then steps on her cigarette. End of episode 1.
Esoteric.
We begin episode 2 with her asking him what's wrong, effectively. And he opens his mouth to begin talking, and then he closes it, clearly not wanting to talk about it. And she's like, well, silent types aren't really turnoffs for me. So here, I got a place that'll cheer you up. Takes his hand, leads him away.
Yeah, my hooker dar was going off.
She takes him deeper and deeper into the city, and after a little while, she leads him to a rave party. And it's pumping, there's a lot of loud music, and there's people all over the place. It's clearly not his type of place, especially when he's very out of his mind with I don't fucking know what I'm doing. She effectively snatches some alcohol that was just laying around, offers it to him.
Is she his age, or is she an adult? Or?
It's a little nebulous. She's around his age.
Okay, so she's still also young?
Yes.
Okay.
And after some hemming and hawing about the alcohol, he eventually takes the whole bottle, downs it all in one gulp, and then tosses it, and it shatters. And the next little bit is a lot of weird, stunted imagery that is very out of order of him at the rave party with
lots of neon lights and crowds and cut frames and wishy watercolory.
Exactly. A lot of stuff that just clearly to a...
I think I have the image.
Yes, okay, I'm glad you got it. Once that scene's over, we cut, and now he wakes up and finds himself laying down on a park bench. He gets up holding his head, clearly very groggy, and the gyaru is sitting on the bench smoking another cigarette, just sort of relaxing. She's not really caring whether he's awake or not.
She's the fucking counterculture fairy. Manic pixie dream thought.
What the hell? He then looks around a little confused what's going on, and as he's opening his mouth, his stomach growls. She looks over to him, and she's like, you got any money? He reaches for where his wallet would be. It's not there. He's like, no. And she's like, well, if you want to eat, you got to get money. Then she gets up and very, very casually pickpockets someone. Someone's walking right by the park bench. She just kind of slips her hand right in, grabs a wallet, and she waves it, showing off that she could do it so easily. Then it's his turn.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, many times he gets almost caught and constantly is running away. He has 4 or 5 bad attempts, but on the 5th or 6th attempt, he manages to get away with a wallet.
Woo, crime.
He goes to a corner mart and grabs a bunch of instant foods like onigiri and other things he can just sort of snack on.
Just say ramen.
Well, ramen you need a microwave. It doesn't have a microwave.
What is that thing you said?
It's a rice ball. It's just a rice ball in the shape of a triangle, usually with something inside it.
That's what those are called?
Yeah, those are onigiri.
I've seen those in things.
Yeah, well, now you know. Anyway, so onigiri and soy sauce and just things that you can just sort of snack on like chips. And he pays and then goes out back to a similar park bench, probably not the same one, and sits down and just starts chowing down. After he finishes eating with the last onigiri in his hand, he sheds a tear which lands in the onigiri, and he begins to regret his decisions thus far.
Nah, you're okay, kid. Don't worry.
The gyaru, who during his stint with him trying to pickpocket wasn't really around, is behind him, and she says, He is more than welcome to return to his humdrum life where his father, who is expecting perfection, can constantly beat him every time he steps out of line, which he realizes he's never told her.
I was going to ask if that was just the wordless part or if, again, she's a genie or...
He has not mentioned this to her. And before he can really question it on her, she reaches into her cleavage and offers him a blunt.
To all the people out there, I just want to just go on record saying how fucking hilarious it is hearing Jared say the word blunt. I won't. That's it. That's the end of my comment.
All right. He ends up smoking the blunt and now walks down the street with even more weird imagery. More coherent than the one that we got in the rave party.
Just dreamy.
Yeah, just much more dreamy and a lot more changes than would be normally.
I have theories.
While in this dreamy, hazy state, he's talking to the girl, and she's saying a lot of, I don't really know exactly how to say it, but she's basically not saying much about herself while talking about herself. She's not revealing anything that would really give away who she is, what she's doing, where she came from, but also saying a lot of things about herself.
Talking more like where she hangs out or where she goes shopping or the club she likes, but not saying anything about her home life or where she came from.
Yeah, exactly. Things that don't really give away much information about her.
Flavor text, not information.
Yes. After the hazy scene slowly dies down, she then convinces him to go into an alcohol store and steal a bottle of wine, which he does.
Yahoo. Delinquency and fear and loathing.
They then run underneath a nearby bridge and they pop open the wine and they drink right from it, sharing it. After they finish the wine, she then turns over to him and says that she knows an even more fun place that they can go hang and leads him to the shadiest part of town there is and right into a drug den. He clearly does a lot more drugs. And
I assume since you say clearly, we're not explicitly shown. It's just kind of montage and implied.
Yes, and there's a lot of...
We see smoke and needles, but we don't see him sit there and shoot up or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we also get the most intense imagery we've seen so far and things that don't make sense from the cohesive narrative of the story. Just a lot of out there imagery, like him being an astronaut in space, which is then shot by a laser shooting pig, which falls into his lap and then becomes a girl, which then morphs into an alien, which takes him underground. And it's just things that don't make sense.
Crazy ass acid trips.
Yes.
I was talking about Pink Floyd earlier.
After all this crazy imagery is finally done, we now see him back on the street walking down. He's a little in shambles, like his clothes are clearly smelly and a little roughed up. Nothing's like ripped. He's not living like a hobo. It's just he's not in good shape. He walks right by a TV store that's showing off like newest TVs at the time or whatever, and they're all on the news. He walks by without thinking about it and then stops, turns around and looks. He sees the date. It's been several weeks. He freaks out and runs all the way back home, only to find his house has police tape all over it. He has no idea what has happened. His house...
A one-armed man killed his fucking family.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
No. He freaks out, has no idea what's going on, and he begins to have a mental breakdown.
See, I expected you to say when he saw the TV that he saw himself milk cartoned and his family had put out like a missing persons thing. This is slightly different.
Yeah. The Gyaru then walks up from behind him and says more eloquently, "This sucks." After he spends another like 3 minutes just bawling and crying and whatnot, he looks right up to her and says, "Do you want to die with me?"
Fucking A.
We cut to the same building he was on at the beginning of the story. That same really tall building looking down the street, except now he's holding in his hand the Gyaru he's been with through most of the story.
Oh, she fit in his hand?
Shut up.
Yeah, stupid joke, sorry.
He looks at her, smiles, and drops backwards off the building. As he's falling, he looks over to her again, thinking to himself, well, at least I won't die alone. What do you open your mouth to say?
Nothing.
She slowly...
disappears. She's not real.
Yeah. And she reappears on the top of the building, looking down at him, and then walks out of sight. As he continues falling now, he has flashbacks to the alleyway where he first was offered drugs.
Revelatory flashbacks showing from his real perspective what happened and he was alone and shit.
That makes it too clear. It's very unclear. It's a very low angle of the same shot with the drugs, but from an angle and a POV shot that almost shows him being slumped against the wall. And right before his head touches the ground, we end.
Woof.
So now I just want to explain things for people that didn't pick it up. Eric clearly picked up on it. There's a lot of questions that this anime can raise. One of the most important things is, was she real? Because there's several interpretations here. So obviously she could just be real. She could just be a devil on his shoulder, and at that last moment he could have been having a mental breakdown and thought he was with her. Or she could have been completely an imagined thing, either from the drugs he may or may not have taken from the alley, or something that he created, basically a tulpa in his head, and he just imagined her. Because throughout the story, she never once pushes the story forward. She only influences him to do the story. Like when she's leading him to the drug den, he knows where the shady part of town is. All he has to do is walk around long enough and he'll find a drug den. With the rave, it's the same kind of thing. He has vague ideas of where raves could be, so all he has to do is enter enough buildings, he'll find a rave. We're just not shown the amount of time he's actually wandering. Like there's one scene during the pickpocketing section where he stays at a hotel, and she walks right up to the bellhop and is like, one room, please. And the bellhop doesn't even look at her, looks right at the main character. He nods, puts money on the table, and he gets one room. And there's a lot of that. She's never looked at, never referenced. All of her comments are sort of addendums.
She's like Donnie from The Big Lebowski.
She's a lot like Ninja from Afro Samurai.
Oh, fuck. That's a way better one.
Yes.
All right, word. Except, I mean, Ninja's 100% is a fucking brain tumor.
Well, there's a theory that Ninja is actually the guardian of the second headband.
Oh, yeah, I have heard that. Yeah, Ninja comes with the headband, and we only ever see Afro have it, or at least in his narrative headspace.
Yeah, exactly. So this could have all just been something in his head, because he could also just be having a fucking drug dream out in the alley, and it's only been a day.
And he could have seen one hot, weird-looking chick and then just conflated it in his warped mind.
Yeah, he may not even be dead. He could still be in the alley. We have no idea.
Or still be, the whole thing could have taken place on the roof.
Yeah, and the importance of the Gyaru is it's a very significant, like, counterculture kind of thing. There's a stereotype around them that they're kind of rule breakers. They're usually like the
promiscuous.
Yeah, they're promiscuous, and they're the ones that are willing to go do more extreme things. Like it's just the clothing style, but that's usually the idea the Japanese people have around them. So her being the devil on his shoulders without this was a good representation of that. So yeah.
Okay.
Wait, I do have one more thing.
Go on.
This also is only 10 episodes.
10?
Yes, and it's an ONA, original net animation.
Wow.
It's not something produced by a big studio, and it's not something that was released to TV stations or whatever, because the creators of this wanted something that they could just create without having...
Yeah, they wanted to get real weird with it.
Yes, and thus it was not very popular for a very long time. It gains popularity a lot later, but only by people that are just interested in like seeing a different style.
Counterculture hipsters.
Yeah, a little. All right, there we go. Now I'm done.
Right, now you're done. I like the Easternization TM in that I think you did about the best you could do with a story that is literally 100% about Americana and the American dream and post-Vietnam shit, and making it about Japanese cultural insecurities and such with parental pressures and social constructs and all that stuff. So I think you did a pretty decent job bringing the themes in. Mm-hmm. And again, I did you just like Google Japanese counterculture stuff and find out at the Gyaru? Or
No,
knew?
It's something I already knew,
Okay.
though it got reinforced recently.
Fair. I was going to say, because yeah, that I think is a decent thing. I think it loses out on the lack of a partner type character, but at the same time, that's not really the vibe you're going with. This is more thematic than it is tonal, because Fear and Loathing is kind of a half comedy, dramedy, something. It's weird. And it's kind of cheeky, and this is clearly more melancholy, so it wouldn't really fit to have like a Dr. Gonzo fucking shooting the shit and doing crazy shit. I'll also say it's funny that last week I had to do stuff that was really crazy ass imagery, and this week you had to do stuff with crazy ass imagery.
Huh, I didn't even think about that.
I should have made you watch Fear and Loathing last week.
Well,
fuck it.
Too late.
But in the same vein as it, considering how little this lines up with anything you are, I think you did a pretty good job with it. That being said, I do think the ambiguity of specifically the Gyaru character, I think that's it's somewhere between risky and lazy. I don't know where I think it falls.
I guess that's fair.
Because again, I thought it was about as obvious as it could have been. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, that's one of those, we're just explaining it, so in execution, it could have been different. But either way, I think that's a risky thing. That would have to depend on how well it was done in the theoretical fiction. But I'll give it to you again. More or less kudos, especially for how hard I promised this would be.
It was pretty challenging.
But you seem to enjoy what you made.
Yeah, I'm kind of proud of what I did.
Would you watch it?
No.
Fucking. All right. What do I got today?
You got the famous Prince of Tennis.
Yay.
For those that don't know, Prince of Tennis is about a young man, 12 years old, who is the son of former pro tennis star player, the Samurai.
That's his Christian name.
No, it's his fancy Japanese animation. Oh, look how amazing his name. Anyway, he's an amazing tennis player, and he comes to a school that is known for its amazing tennis team, trouncing basically everyone he comes against until eventually he comes across a rival that can challenge him.
There are like 200 episodes of this fucking show.
There really is. There's a lot.
There is so much of this show for no reason.
Well, there's people that enjoy it.
Oh, Lord.
However, I'm not one of them.
Yeah, I didn't like it either.
This is not on my favorites list.
The first mention of your list. Yay.
Yeah. I, like a lot of people, sometimes use a My Anime List. But when I first started watching...
Is that a website?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a way to track your anime, what your ratings are, how much time you spent watching and whatnot.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
But when I first started watching anime, I didn't know this website existed. So I have a paper folder that I use to keep track of it. I still, to this day, use that same paper folder.
It's true. I've seen it.
It has 10 pages of just my favorites on it. And I really don't use My Anime List as much as I should because I have this paper folder.
He likes a lot of things.
I do.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Bring us to there, Eric.
Bring us to the Prince of Tennis.
Yes.
Yay. For the record, we're keeping that name because I just like to get that out of the way at the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's absolutely no reason I can't call it Prince of Tennis. Anyway, we open at the tail end of a really intense tennis match. As intense as tennis can get without someone's life being on the line. Between two adult men.
Okay.
And this is clearly a professional setup. They're wearing professional tennis duds. They're really, really good at what they're doing. There's a crowd. There's one of those announcers doing that kind of bullshit hushed Wimbledon commentary, like, oh, look, he's hit it to the right and he's volleyed it back and blah blah blah. And
are we getting really cool like action angles, like low angles on the balls and like?
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Like
Okay.
we're shooting it with the intensity that the characters are feeling.
Okay.
And we're clearly favoring one of the two players pretty quickly because we only spent a couple of minutes here. Not even the one that we are favoring wins. He lands the last tennis hit.
Volley.
Sure. I mean, no, volley's when it goes back and forth. I don't know what. He scores the last point and he falls to his knees. It's like the end of a Rocky movie. He's in half tears, pumps his arms like, yes, I did it. And the crowd explodes into applause. The announcer says, oh, what's his name is now the champion, if that's how it works. I don't even know if it does, but either way, some victory thing.
You were yelling at me for not knowing ice skating before.
You didn't need to know ice skating.
I kind of did.
Nuh-uh. The movie gave you all you needed.
Whatever, go ahead.
We see in the crowd a woman who is clearly his wife or partner, what have you, and next to her, a young boy, probably 4 or 5 years old. And we zoom in on this child, clearly his son. Then we cut, title card on black says Prince of Tennis. Cut, and we see the same kid now 10 years older, like mid-teens, something like between middle school and high school, 14, 15, 16.
Okay.
And he's in a car on his way to prep school. Mom and dad being the tennis player, now visibly older, are in the front seat and they're just driving along. It's raining and our lead looks kind of bored, just kind of hand on his chin, looking out the window, listening to his parents prattle on about the school. And through their dialogue, we get exposition about, oh, this is my alma mater, son. This is where I went to school, the best prep school on this half of the country, and everyone there will know my name, so you have a lot to live up to. And they have a really good tennis team, so maybe you should sign up. And they just give him all this half pressure, but half loving pressure.
I don't want to be a tennis player, Dad. I want to be a fighter.
Jesus fucking. His name is Goku.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Anyway, so yeah, we reveal all this stuff, and by the end of it, they imply he should join the tennis team. He kind of shrugs it off. He's like, yeah, maybe I will, sure. Doesn't seem to specifically care, but he's also clearly just not in a position where he wants to be talking to his parents about this right now. Again, this is clearly old hat.
Okay.
And we cut, and we see him dropped off at this very prestigious, kind of pompous prep school, and they give him a quick, loving send off, like a kiss his cheek, pat him on the head, help him throw his stuff in his room. They're like, all right, if you you need anything, just call. He's like, no, I'm good, get out. He wants them to leave, kind of ushers them out. He's like, it's a long drive, you don't want to be stuck here. And he ushers them away very quickly, kind of does the world's laziest unpack where he just unzips his suitcase, dumps it onto his bed, and then walks onto the hallway where he's met by some school official or like a head
an RA.
Yeah, he's met by like an RA sort of person who says, meet us outside the building in 5 minutes. We're going to give a guided tour of the dormitories and the facilities. He's like, yeah, maybe. Then immediately, as soon as they leave, walks away to give himself his own tour because he's a rebel.
Oh, yeah.
I needed to keep some of the edginess. And I needed to give it a basis. So he walks around the campus. We see the buildings, we see how nice the place is, and we meet who will become our side characters. There's like a group of not nerds, but just not stuck up kids who will become his friends. Meets them along the way, and they're friendly. He says hi. They actually talk to him, and he talks back. And eventually he stops in the foyer of the building, and he sees a big trophy case. Inside, there's one for basketball, one for a swim team, but naturally looks at the tennis one, and there's years after year after year after year after year of tennis team trophies until he sees one that obviously shows his father. We know
I was about to ask.
Yeah, we know that through the namesake and the fact that it looks like him. But yeah, we see his father's. There's specifically the team from that year, and his father specifically got a separate trophy that is here on loan to the school. But so he kind of stares at the trophy for 5-6 seconds. We do a little bit of a push in kind of slowly, and then we cut, and he's outside the back of the school, smoking a cigarette, leaning against the wall, looking at the tennis courts.
Very
incidentally
edgy.
Oh yeah, he's pretty edgy. Off on the tennis courts, we see a bunch of the prep school kids who are already here playing tennis, and they're just kind of laughing and talking and being kind of stuck up about their own lives and hitting, and one of them spies our lead, who's just smoking a cigarette watching, kind of calls out to him, says something dickish, just like, oh, hey kid, you want to play? And then smacks a tennis ball all the way over to him, and it like whacks off the wall right next to his head, almost hits him. And bounces to his feet, and he's like, hey, a little help, huh? Our lead kicks it, not towards them, just off in one direction, flicks his cigarette away, walks away.
Hell yeah.
Then we get a few scenes of just schooling, just his school life, meet a few of his teachers, see his dynamic with his friends, and this kid who hit into him on the tennis court is clearly something of a rival. He just already has just a fucking stick up his ass about the kid. And at the end of this sequence of short little schooling scenes, he's on we'll call it a Skype call with his parents.
Oh, homesick already?
No, they're homesick.
Yeah, I understand. I went to college. It happened.
And so they're giving him the whole like, oh, tell us about your weekend. We get a little bit of shorthand so we don't have to repeat what we just saw. And he says, I'm really enjoying it. I'm fitting in. He's clearly lying a little bit just to sell it to them because his dad is super psyched about him being at his old prep school. And eventually his dad's like, oh, well, I talked to my old friend, the coach, and he's still at the school. So maybe you should join. I mean, it looks really good in your college application if you're playing a tennis team, especially with how good you are, right, son? He's like, yeah, okay, dad. Hey. Says, I got to go. I have homework. Bye. I love you. Hangs up. Then in our next scene, it's the end of one of the classes, and all the kids are picking up their books, leaving the room. But the teacher stops our lead at the door and kind of says, oh, Mr. whatever the hell his last name is, I was just wondering, because I'm the assistant coach, will you be joining our tennis team this year? And our lead half snaps. He doesn't yell at him, but he just kind of stomps his feet and says, oh, hell, I wish I could get through one calendar hour without being asked about this. And then the assistant coach is kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. whatever. I didn't mean to offend. He's like, no, it's fine. Like, he kind of just breezes past him and mutters like, it's okay. It's not your fault. Bye. Then we get a scene of our lead and his friends out on, let's say, the bleachers, which is, again, near the athletic area, which includes the tennis courts. And they're just doing homework, minding their own business, something. And rival kid walks over to him, kind of finally seeming to know who this kid is, our lead, and says, oh, if you're your father's son, you're regular prince of tennis, eh? Hey, I said it.
Name drop.
Yeah. He just eggs him on, says, or why don't we put your father's money where your mouth is, eh, kid, if he's so fucking good? And then he challenges him to do some trick shot tennis thing, like
something equivalent to the rocks in the can.
Yeah, I was going to say something like those tubes that tennis balls come in, set it up on the far end of the court. It's like, oh, whoever can knock it over, whoever can hit one into it the best or fastest once or most times out of 20 or something. And our lead kind of brushes him off, just says, I didn't say I was. And even if I was that good, wouldn't you want me on your team? The rival kind of says, oh yeah, that's what I thought. You know, you're not even that good. Otherwise you'd fucking do it. Just says something shitty and just kind of trundles off. And we get to that night and our lead is sitting alone in bed, just lit by only the light of his laptop. He's doing homework or watching videos or something. And he kind of stops whatever he's doing, like closes the windows, opens up work safe YouTube or whatever video player we get for the movie.
Yeah.
And he brings up an old tennis match of his father's, kind of watches it a la Creed and just watches his dad until, naturally being who he was, won the match. And for a brief moment in the YouTube clip, his dad looks off into the crowd and sees our young lead in the crowd waving his own mini tennis racket at him or something. And he gives his kid a thumbs up and then goes to get praise and be a winner.
A nice dad-child moment.
Yeah, and our lead pauses the video on this moment or right after it and kind of stares at the screen for a minute, closes it. Then he just goes out to the court at night to be dramatic. We just get one shot of him standing alone on the tennis court with the heavy spotlight on him from above and a long shadow that's symbolic of being in his dad's shadow. But then we cut, and the very next day, he decides to sign up for the tennis team.
Woo! Prince of Tennis is finally doing tennis.
And naturally, the bully is kind of like meh about it, but everyone else seems happy. The coach and the assistant coach are both pleased. The other players are pleased, and we see him do a few scenes of practicing, and our lead's pretty damn good. Like, he's not as over the top good as the lead from the anime, who is fucking god of tennis at the age of 12.
Yeah, he was a little too good for his age group.
Or any age group, really. But so he's very good at what he does, and our rival is immediately jealous because he was the best on his team. Now he's the second best.
Star player being replaced.
Yeah, exactly. But pretty quickly, we get to our first match. We narratively stick with our lead for the whole time, where he's off to the side or behind the bleachers or something before it's his turn, because in tennis, it's the one-on-one thing. And we see him just goofing around with his friends through the chain links, or he's sitting there listening or half watching the other players. But eventually, it's his turn, and he faces down with someone from another school, and the other guy's good, but our lead is far better. Pretty quickly, he gains the upper hand and starts kind of kicking the guy's ass. And just when it's at the turning point where he's about to make it pretty much impossible for the other guy to win, or he's about to win or something, he looks in the audience and sees his mother and father. They showed up to his first match without asking because they were just so proud, and his friend, the coach, told them.
Why do I feel like this is going to backfire?
We get maybe a slow-mo shot or maybe just kind of a quick push in just to emphasize that moment of what the fuck while he notices this. Then in the very next action, when he had what even us as the audience assumed would be an easy shot to hit.
Yeah, like the other guy's on one end of the court and the ball, and he's like standing on the other, and he can easily just get it there.
He accidentally whiffs it. Just a terrible shot that gives the other guy an opportunity. Other guy hits it. He loses the match.
Wow.
Everyone's kind of floored by this because he was kicking ass, and he's kind of low-key been built up by the school. They kind of been using his notoriety as, again, they don't say the term Prince of Tennis, but as X's son, to kind of say like, oh, we got a secret weapon, like, da-da-da.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he failed. The coach is a little miffed, and his parents visit him afterwards, and his dad specifically is like, son, what was that? Like, you had him. Like, you really just, he's like, oh, I don't know. It is what it is. Like, I almost had him. Don't worry. It doesn't have to be that big of a deal. And his dad's not angry at him, just his dad is clearly a very competitive person.
Yeah.
And his dad is just kind of like, come on, like, we were so close. Like, he doesn't see it as a bad thing. He's just kind of like, oh, son, you got to do better, like, next time.
Yeah, like he's the very intense kind of person. Like, it's like everyone has to push themselves to the best of their ability.
Yeah, very old school mentalities.
Gotcha.
Anyway, our lead just gives him the whole, I don't know what happened, I'll try and do better for you next time thing. But we cut, and it's sometime probably later that night in the dormitories or whatever, and the rival approaches our lead and kind of starts gloating. Just like, oh, wow, you were so good. Like, are you sure you're the star player? Like, what was that shit? I wouldn't have missed that shot, and I would have won. I did win my match. Like, way to pull your weight for the team, asshole. And he just keeps digging into our lead until our lead proves that he does have some pride under there that can get scuffed. And he lashes back. So he turns back at the rival and just kind of throws it in his face. He's like, I threw the match right. It was pretty obvious, and I could kick your ass anytime, any day, right? The rival is getting exactly what he wanted out of him reaction-wise. Like, okay, then let's prove it, huh, hotshot? Let's do this. And he goats our lead into accepting a private, just between them match.
Yeah.
Because our lead's aggro right now. Our lead's like, yeah, you name the time and the place, I'll fucking be there. And the rival's like, good, I will. I'll get back to you. And walks away. And our lead's like, oops. Like, whatever. No,
Whatever, I'll kick his ass.
Yeah, we see that brief moment of hesitation. Like, oh shit, should I have done that? And then he's like, no, I got this. We get a couple of scenes of just normal schooling and social drama around the match and of friends reacting to it and just build up and such. And we see him going to practice still, and the rival and him always eyeing each other down dramatically. But before too long, we get to this final match, which is outside on the tennis court at night, like stroke of midnight, with the court being lit only by those dramatic overhead street lights. And the rival decided to invite all his friends. So there's a crowd now. And our lead invited his like 3 friends. But so now there's a pretty sizable crowd. And using the crowd to his advantage, the rival goats our lead into some stakes. He implies he wants to make it some kind of bet. And our lead's like, oh, well, I mean, what do you need money for? He's like, oh, I don't want money.
I want you off the team.
No.
Oh, that was the obvious answer.
Your father's trophy.
What the fuck, dude? That doesn't even belong to him.
And our lead, now surrounded by a big crowd of mostly people rooting for the rival, he can't really say no. So uncomfortable, he's like, yeah, fine. If you win, you get the trophy.
Sure, you can say no, buddy. Just don't give it to peer pressure.
Nope, no.
Some people just don't know how to just ignore crowds.
No, they don't.
Go ahead.
Then tennis. Again, as intense as tennis between 2 mid-pubescent boys can be. They're sweaty and they're knocking the freaking tennis ball back and forth. They're jumping around, and it's a very impressive show of athletics. And yeah, they're running, and it's pretty interesting, I say with confidence.
It's tennis, so either you like it or you don't.
Yeah, basically. But the rival's good, but our lead is obviously a bit better and starts to gain the upper hand again, as you'd expect.
Then his father shows up.
What the
His father looks on excitingly, and he's like, oh, damn, I gotta throw this match too.
No, but the rival gets more and more pissy as the lead gets a little bit closer and closer to winning. Eventually, after the lead scores a point, the rival kind of has that petulant child, like, oh, fuck, like freaks out, turns toward our lead, and whips his tennis racket right at the lead's face.
Fuck you, dude.
It's so close to beaning our lead in the face, but this is essentially what tennis is, whips his own racket in the way and blocks it at the last second. But both rackets clatter against the ground, and even the crowd who was here for the rival kind of boos at him. They're like, oh, fucking boo, like bad sportsmanship, man up. And he's kind of like, go to hell, like whatever, I'm winning this. He's cheating. Yeah, just some shitty shit. And he walks over, kind of shoulder checks the lead, takes his racket back, steps on the lead's racket like an asshole. And our lead picks up his racket and notices it's kind of fucked up. Like some of the...
I figured as soon as you said he blocked it, I was like, oh god, his racket's gonna be...
Yeah, like some of the strings are like messed up. It's just scuffed up and not at full capacity.
Now this is where a smart person would be like, hey, my racket's fucked because you like threw your racket at me. Can I get a new one? But the mid-lead's not gonna do that now, is he?
No, of course not. This is all about teen pride, which is always dumb. So he cannot stop the match.
I'm not claiming that your reasoning is wrong. I'm just saying that's what I would do.
Yeah, teen pride. Anyway, this busted racket adds some extra tension, and it loses him a few points and makes it a little more
intense and closer.
But our lead still wins, of course.
Yeah,
this isn't Rocky. Our lead still wins. He goes the distance, if you will, ends up, again, by a close margin, taking it home. And the crowd, in another Rockyism, turns on our rival and starts cheering for our lead. And we see some money exchange in the crowd, so there was clearly some off-track betting going on. But our lead walks over to the rival. The rival, since he didn't have a trophy to give, he was like, oh, I'll give you this much money if you win, which you won't. And the rival kind of, with his eyes cast down, is like, here's your fucking money. Like, starts handing him a couple $100 bills or whatever it was.
Keep it. I don't need it.
Kind of.
Awesome.
Our lead kind of brushes off. He's like, I don't even want it, but can you just leave me alone now? Stares him down in front of all of his friends. And then the rival, looking down at his feet, kicks one of the tennis balls and is like, yeah, sure, whatever. But all of his friends know that he's bent over a barrel, so it's a social victory.
Yeah.
And the rival walks away kind of dejected, and the lead turns around. His friends are like, yeah, you kicked ass, sweet, yay. But you should have taken his money. And he's like, yeah, I know I should have, but pride thing.
I had a point to prove. It's like, sorry. There was a parallel in my head. It's like losing to a gym leader. The rival wanted the trophy like a gym badge, and when he lost, he had to pay the gym leader money.
Sure, that's what Pokemon does.
Yeah, because it's all extortion. You make a 10-year-old kid pay you like thousands of dollars.
Kind of fucked up.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
The next scene, it's the middle of the day. Our lead's in his room, and he gets a call on his phone. It's from his dad. Picks it up, and his dad excitedly is like, oh, through the grapevine, I heard from so-and-so's dad that you got into a match last night, a private tennis match with so-and-so's kid, but I didn't hear how it ends. How'd it go? Like, come on, champ, tell me all about it. And there's a long pause. Our lead kind of stares at the phone, thinks for a second, not a smirk, but just kind of a content look on his face, and he puts the phone back to his head and says, oh, you know what, Dad? We didn't really keep score. It was just kind of for fun, like an exhibition thing. Another briefer pause, and his dad's like, oh, really? Like his old school sensibilities and his competitive nature don't really, he doesn't get it. But he's just like, okay. Well, how are you going to know if you win if you don't keep score? Like next time keep scoring so you can let me know if you win, right, buddy? He's like, yeah, sure, Dad. I got to go. Hangs up the phone. There's a knock at his door and his friends are right there. They're like, can you come with us? He's like, yeah, one sec. He starts to leave, stops, turns around, grabs his tennis bag so he can go to practice later.
Yeah.
But yeah, grabs his bag, walks out with them, closes the door, credits.
All right.
Yeah, so kind of a half coming of age sports story.
Yeah.
Except I thought the anime had really kind of fucked up priorities with the deifying of a fucking child for what their parents did. The anime was kind of the worst parts of Harry Potter put to a tennis anime. In that, again, like, your dad did this, so you have a lot to live up to, and we're gonna say you're perfect because of that. And it's just, that's a really good way to fuck up a child.
Yeah.
So I wanted this to address that. This is a lot about the kid not wanting to have to live up to his dad's legacy and coming to terms with wanting to play tennis for his own reasons, because he does still love the sport, because he grew up with it and his dad is a big influence on his life. But I didn't want it to be because he is quote unquote the prince of tennis. I thought that was kind of warped.
Makes sense.
Any questions?
Well, I just has a couple statements. Like, I liked that despite the fact he was kind of being like, fuck you, Dad, I want to do what I want, his dad was still really supportive.
Yeah, he was supportive. It was just supportive in almost too much. Like, to a degree that made our lead kind of uncomfortable. But yeah, it was again, it's a different angle. Because if it was just petulant child rebelling against dad who's forcing him to play a sport I don't even want to, Dad, like, that would be just kind of trite. So I wanted to address the themes without going into super cliche territory, because it's a fucking sports movie. It's already going to be somewhat cliched.
I remember that one of the things you were considering doing, because I don't know, I guess this is just my thing though. I like talking about the ideas that you
what
were
I
going.
Almost did.
Yeah.
What I talk about while we're watching it.
Yeah. One of the things Eric mentioned was, without sugarcoating it, basically breaking the main character's leg in a car accident or like up something like that, and he would have to work his way up from the bottom.
Yeah, now I remember. Yeah. Just fucking crippling him near the beginning after. It would have just been a morality play. It would have started with him being cocky and being really good, and then he gets to do a fucking car accident or a skiing accident, breaks his leg, and has to go through like physical therapy while still trying to maintain his tennis skills, and he would have to just get better again at it. But
he didn't go with that.
No, I did not.
So yeah, I like it. I still don't think it would be my first pick to watch, because
not even me.
It's just tennis.
Yeah, essentially, it's prep school kids in tennis.
Yeah, I mean, like, it sounds kind of cool, but I mean,
yeah, again, as I said, it's only so intense and cool you can make tennis.
Yeah.
Anything else on that? Any questions?
I assume you're going to do your director stuff, so get into that.
Okay, so directed by either Kelly Freeman Craig, who you know nothing. I think she's only directed one feature, which is a movie called Edge of 17. I think it was from 2016. Fucking amazing movie. It's just a coming of age-ish high school dramedy. It was just amazing. One of the best movies of that year. I fucking loved it, and I think she could do it. Or Richard Linklater, again, who I think I pegged him for the Amagi Brilliant Park thing, I think, or one of the earlier ones I've done. But again, he directed School of Rock and Boyhood.
Gotcha.
So again, that works really well. Or if I had like a time machine and I could throw Wes Anderson into it, I would maybe pick him if I could just time travel him back to when he made like Rushmore, because modern day Wes Anderson is just too, I'll dodge sniper fire for this, but pompous and up his own ass about everything he does. But like if we made like a Rushmore era Wes Anderson, I think we could do it. But anyway, that's all I got. No actors again. It's really hard to cast for teenagers because I'd have to either pull from fucking Stranger Things or It, which I don't want to because it's just lazy, or do a ton of research into underage actors, which is just a lot of work. Because if I don't see them in something and immediately latch onto them, then I'm not going to know just by IMDbing them or something.
Yeah.
So nobody jumped out at me, but there's more good young actors out there now than there ever would be. So we wouldn't have trouble casting the movie.
Makes enough sense. All right, so since I think Eric's done talking, our Twitter is Jared N, the letter N, Eric1.
And that'll get you to everything else, like we've said a billion times already. Okay, actually only like 8 or 9 times. Speaking of, it's episode 9, Jared, which means next episode is...
Episode 10.
Yay, that's a milestone.
Yay.
You know what else next episode is?
Oh,
the first of our month-long horror celebration on this show.
Said
from my angle, because you're not going to give me nothing but horror animes, but you're getting nothing but spooky movies. I say spooky because they're not all horror movies. Don't worry too bad. You'll be fine next week. I'll start you off easy.
Still not looking forward to it.
I know. All right. Anything else?
No, I think we're all good.
Okay. So I'm Eric.
I'm Jared.